Insights for a TV campaign are so different than insights that I might use for TikTok. It comes to life in a variety of asset types. I mean, we've done stock up, AMSR, mukbangs, rage bait.
I can't get on board with rage bait. That one's so hard. Just because I hate it so much as a consumer, that one's just really tough for me.
Our take on rage bait, it was just so over the top ridiculous that it was funny. Someone is going to be pouring their Sunsip. They ran out of ice, so they used frozen vegetables, which is like absolutely disgusting. They put the frozen vegetables in and then pour their Sunsip, and TikTok had a field day with that. That's one of those things that had the team come to me and said, "Are you cool with this?" I'd be like, "Hell no. Are you kidding me?" But in the end of the day, you got to let the team take risks, especially in organic social. It's the place to play with those things. And there's a reason why rage bait works. It's tapping into whatever that collective consciousness is in the moment.
This episode of Inside the Process is powered by Trainual, the one app that organizes who does what and how. Check it out at trainual.com.
Well, what is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Inside the Process, where we sit down with some of the raddest people in business to dig into how they think and operate to help you continuously improve and level up the work you're doing. Today on Inside the Process, we are sitting down with Charlotte Mostaed, the Chief Marketing Officer at Health-Ade, the gut health brand known for its bold flavors and even bolder brand. When she's not hiking the Santa Monica Hills or upside down in a hot yoga class, Charlotte's leading the charge on turning kombucha into a lifestyle, blending smart strategy with serious creativity to grow Health-Ade into a $200 million powerhouse. That is incredible. And we are so excited to dive into her story today. So welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I personally loved the line in your bio that said creating a bold and bubbly fan base. I think that is so clever and so fun. So tell us about your journey to becoming CMO for a top health brand, and what do you want those bold and bubbly fans to know about you?
Yeah, well, I think let's start at the beginning. First of all, as I started my career, I was in the public and nonprofit world, and it was very important to me that whatever I worked on, I was making an impact in the world that actually mattered. But working in the nonprofit public world wasn't really going to pay the bills at the end of the day. So I got my MBA. And then as I thought about the careers after that, I was really choiceful about which brands I was going to go work for. So I started my career at P&G at Tampax, and then moved over to Always Discreet. And as I looked at opportunities after that, it always was important to me that I would use the product myself and that I would have my friends and family use it. So when the Palm Wonderful opportunity opened up, and they, asked if I wanted to relocate to LA and come work for that company, that really aligned with everything that I was excited about, because it's a health and wellness, better for you beverage, but with a lot of fun marketing going on. And then, frankly, I saw the Health-Ade position open up, and I just really wanted that job. I had heard about it from a friend and another colleague, and I was like, oh my God, I love Health-Ade. This is my jam. This is my favorite kombucha. I love this brand. And I really want this. Plus, I know that it's going to make people's lives better if more and more people drink kombucha. It wasn't the best timing in my personal life. I just had my second daughter. The pandemic was in full force. This was mid-2020. And I was literally living with my in-laws in Ohio so they could help with childcare, even though I was usually based in California. But I wanted it really badly. And the way I got it is I convinced them that they actually didn't want a CMO, that they wanted a VP of marketing. And the funny story behind that is that they had been recruiting for this role for a long time, and I had gotten so far in the process. I mean, 9 or a dozen interviews, something like that. I talked to Dinah, the CEO, the founder, 4 or 5 times. I was in thick, right? Like I was starting to work on the problems in my head that they had as a business, just hearing from everybody. And then one day the HR recruiter called me and she's like, I'm sorry, but you didn't get the job. And I was like, what? No way. And she's like, they really think they need a CMO. It's a private equity company. At some point, they want to sell the business. They want someone who's had experience with that. And I was just so fired up. I was like, no way, man. They need me. And I know exactly what I'm going to do.
I love that.
Yeah. I was like, I don't think that's the right answer. So I wrote a really long email. And the other thing I knew about Health Aid, which is part of what really made me want to work there, is they valued somebody that spoke up. Like we still do, right? It's part of our core culture. We call it a speak up culture. We really, really value somebody that has a strong point of view and goes after what they believe in and is willing to, in a very respectful way, push back. So I wrote a very long email to Dinah and to the head of HR. And I just wrote through everything I would do and everything that I saw as opportunities in the company, the way that I was looking at it, assessing it from my strategic point of view. And they called me back and they're like, whoa, you cut through our issues like a hot knife through butter. I just remember Deb saying that so clearly. And they had me present to the larger exec team. And I convinced them that they only needed a VP because I think, given my experience at the time, that's what they felt was more, they were ready for. And then 2 years later, I was like, actually, you need to make me a CMO. And they were on board at that point. So I was very lucky.
That is such an incredible story. One, I think you're my new favorite person because the conviction, the drive, the execution, like those are the type of people I want on my team 10 out of 10 times. Like those are the people I think we are always on the hunt for, especially with Trainual also being like a brand that wants to be leading the charge in sort of like the creative marketing space. And so people who show up and just have that type of fire are so rare. And it's also so cool to see a female do it and say, you need me and this is why, and be bold enough to like send an email sort of picking apart everything that they were doing. I feel like that just creates such opportunity for all of the women that come after you. So like I said, I'm obsessed. You're my new favorite person.
Thank you.
But another thing that you said that I really loved was how this all started with your values and like wanting to find a company that aligned with your values, a product that you use, like something that you could really get behind. Because I think a lot of people would have saw that, CMO title and said, I'm ready for this next step in my career. And they don't even care about the brand. They're just like title chasing. And you said, I don't care about the title. Actually, I think you need a VP. I'd take a lesser title. I care about your brand. I care about your problems. And I care that we share a common mission. And I think that is so incredibly special. So thank you for sharing that story with us.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun. You had nothing to lose. That's basically what I figured. And my mom was critical in that, right? I called her. I couldn't sleep that night. I had written the email in my head instead of sleeping. I wrote it out the next day, called my mom and I was like, should I do this? And she's like, what do you have to lose? Like, really? What do you, and that was helpful. And I thought, you got to shoot your shot.
And you did. And look at how that went. So anybody who's listening, shoot your shot, do it.
Yep.
We'll cheer you on. So when you think back to your early days at Health Aid, it sounds like you sort of, picked it apart before day one. What was the vibe of the brand sort of like then? And what parts felt like a real staple of the brand versus where did you sort of see the room to evolve? Maybe let us behind the curtain a little bit on some of the things that you felt like needed to change that you took a hot knife to.
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, we know I started as a huge fan. So I already loved this brand. I loved the product, right? That was something that, as a consumer was so important to me. And I valued every single thing that Health Aid had done in creating this amazing kombucha. I had quit Diet Coke in 2013. So I had said, I'm not doing this anymore 7 years before that. And I had been on my own health journey of cutting out all fake shit basically out of my diet and, and no, artificial sweeteners, nothing like that. And when you get that strict about the types of food, not that I was that strict, but beverage wise, you look at things at the store and you're like, man, this has erythritol, this has aspartame, this has XYZ. And so it really cuts down that consideration set a lot if you want more than water. And so that's how I first found kombucha, and then finding Health-Ade. First of all, they were the best tasting. By far, I already knew that as a consumer. I wasn't as loyal to Health-Ade as I am now. I did try a bunch of different brands all the time, but they also were small batch, organic, and talked about whole food ingredients. And I just loved everything. And then as a marketer, so that's like the consumer side of me, I was so excited because the founders did an incredible job at setting any marketer like myself up for success. We've always been in a brown bottle. They created these iconic assets from day one, that this apothecary look, tone, and feel, the word Health-Ade, the anchor on the front, all of these assets that help cue what this product is without even needing to say much more. Kombucha is just as big as the word Health-Ade. So there's no missing what category this is in. And the brown bottle and the entire label decoration cue better for you without us having to say it either. So I was in love with the brand fundamentals just from the get-go, and had, that started off, I think, Dinah and my relationship so well because I had so much respect for the fundamental things that she did without having the marketing background. She's just an intuitively genius marketer. And so that was the vibe. But the other thing I saw is that the brand had this big personality and this idea of who it was that was so incredible, but honestly only lived within the four walls of the building in reality. They had created kind of an assessment and a map of what the brand was, and it still is the same to this day. We have not changed it 5 years later. We are the rebellious optimists. We are bold and bubbly and fun. We, kind of break with convention, but in a very you can sit with us and this is for you and this is for everybody way. We're inclusive. Dinah's blue hair or pink hair of the moment is one that we always look back to. But all of that was truly only being seen by the absolute super fans because the brand hadn't scaled yet to do that mass marketing. And so that's where, as I came in, I saw so many amazing things that were just not known yet by the rest of the world that I was excited to share with everybody through kind of a revolutionized and more modern approach to marketing.
What were some of the big turning points for you? Some of the big pivots that sort of took you into that next era? Because you said, hey, I came in as a VP, but by 2 years, I was like, hey, I definitely deserve that CMO title. And I think that comes from proving out change and proving out scale and doing some of those things. So I know you're saying there's a lot with consistency. I actually love the apothecary thing. I had never really put that together. And I'm like, oh, that's why it stands out to me in the supermarket, because I am such a health freak. People who know me know this about me. And so now I understand why I'm so drawn to that. So I think that's in and of itself is so clever. But there was obviously a lot of things within what stayed the same that you did differently in order to go from VP to CMO. Anything you can share there?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some really big moments in the last 5 years. So one of them had already been in motion before I started. And that was the team, along with Dinah, had been looking at how do we refresh and maybe modernize some of our look. They were worried that the apothecary look, the vintage character drawings, things like that, were starting to feel a little bit stale. The business had been around for 7 years at that point. And so they were in a process of codifying what was important and then figuring out where we could push to help people feel like we're modern and staying with the times. Day 2, this is a fun story. I looked at this is literally my second day on the job. They had been working with this big agency on a big brand refresh, and they showed me the creative. And they had decided to really evolve the anchor on the front of the bottle. And it was going to be quite different and slimmed down and a lot more, I think, abstract of an anchor versus where the brand had been. And I literally threw a red flag on that play and said, I know I'm new here and I'm so sorry because everyone else seems to be on board. But Dinah, do you realize what a huge change this is? This anchor is everywhere. This is a complete departure. And you don't need to change an iconic asset like this to do a brand restage. I would really suggest pulling it back. And to her credit, she trusted me and we pulled it back, but we still underwent a huge phase of restaging the brand. So we went from monochromatic, mostly white background labels to a full color presence on shelf. And this was truly built out of an insight that people are shopping by flavor. And that shelf navigation is really a key trial barrier when you have to look at the fine print to figure out the flavor name. And we had an opportunity to amp up our appetite appeal. So that was part of it. The other part of it was building in the first 5 months that I was there, a new and first major campaign that would go across TV, digital video, paid. The brand had really never done an owned paid media campaign in that way. There had been a ton of grassroots things. There had been some print in a partnership. There had been a lot of sampling, field marketing, but not the modern paid machine that we all know and love for paid media. So I pioneered our first one, and we launched that in April. And we learned a lot. That was a huge moment. We took the brand to 23% growth versus a year ago through our restage. And that kind of got us off to the races.
That's so cool. Yeah. I feel like I just saw in the supermarket the other day, it's like a gradient background now, right? On like the backs of the bottles. And correct me if I'm wrong. Are there like different colors gradients for different flavors and things too? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I noticed.
Yeah. So now you can navigate, like if you're a ginger lemon person, you're going to find your yellow label. If you're a pink lady apple person, you're going to find your red to yellow or red to beige gradient. And that just, I think it starts your appetite. It helps you understand what the flavor is inside, but also helps us show up in a really bright and fun way on the shelf. Because we didn't want to break the apothecary, some of the things that made us who we were, but we were hearing from consumers that we weren't as fun outwardly as we thought we were. So we also changed our characters from vintage drawings to more modern ones. And then in our campaign, decided to be a lot more outwardly vocal about being a rebellious optimist, inviting you in, all of those things.
Okay, you're making me think of something. And I'm sorry if we're going to be talking about a competitor, we can whisper if you want to. But yeah. I was in the store the other day and I have been a long time Poppy fan. I know they've been all over the news. They were recently bought out and that's kind of scary for like who bought them out. But I've noticed some big shifts in their marketing and they're now like my kids are noticing their stuff and they have like Minecraft on the labels and they did a partnership with Post Malone and this brand that like once used to be something that I as a health food consumer used to trust. I am sort of like throwing up all of these red flags in my mind going, okay, I don't know how much health benefit there is to this thing with a Minecraft bumblebee and all of these crazy caricatures and things on it. How do you sort of toe the line between making like responsible choices for the brand and sticking true to the fact that you are a very health beneficial company without going overboard to the point that you're too fun and now you look like every other food brand that has red dye 40 and fake sugars and just all this bad stuff that we as health consumers are trying to avoid?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question. And I think it's something that actually we have as a tension point within our own organization all of the time. And that's because being organic, being the only organic kombucha of the top 5 brands that's growing the category, I mean, that is a choice we are making to pay more for our ingredients, to go through all of the certification processes, all of those things, to use sugar instead of, stevia, erythritol, whatever, is also a choice we're making. And so I had the pleasure of working with the founders in my first 2 years at HealthAid, and I was very committed to what we created as the bona fides of the brand. And I continue, and we all continue to push those forward within the company. We will get board members that say, why don't you use stevia? Why don't you use this? People are anti-sugar, for example. And we say, well, this is not the product line to do it. We did launch Sunsip, which is a prebiotic soda, has tons of vitamins and minerals in it, as well as prebiotics. And we chose to sweeten it with monk fruit. There are some studies out there. They're a little bit conflicting around stevia and gut health. And so we said stevia is not for us, but we feel like sweetening with a little bit of monk fruit, cane sugar are real whole food and natural ways to sweeten the product. And so we keep those really central to every decision. However, some other pivotal moments that happen in our brand is in 2023. So spring of 23 and summer of 23, we decided to embark on some big mainstream partnerships, as well as put our kombucha in a can for the first time. So all of those things might look to somebody like, oh no, are they still the, homegrown kombucha that I know and love? And I will say, yes, we are, but we also want to make sure we're introducing kombucha to more people than what we've been able to do before. So we put our kombucha in a can, and we also launched a Dodgers partnership. So for the first time, spring of 23, you could buy a kombucha at Dodger Stadium, which is really, really cool because our whole message and our whole idea is that we're transforming beverage calories in America. We are influencing people to drink better for you and for them to switch their soda, maybe not every time, but some of the time, for fermented food. People don't get enough fermented foods in their diet. Kombucha is really lovely and delicious, and it has a right to play at these major mainstream moments. So we launched a Dodgers partnership. We also brought on Ryan Seacrest and iHeartMedia as investors to the brand. Again, you could say maybe we're selling out, but we are doing it in a way that feels very connected to still who we are. And we keep those product fundamentals super core to everything we do. So we are still, completely organic, made with whole food ingredients. We don't use natural flavors in our kombucha, things like that, because we think you can still be that and yet go mainstream, help people understand why this product is belonging in their life and their routines.
It's so interesting that you said we're, trying not to sell out or however you worded it. And my first thought was, you're not selling out at all. In fact, you're just focusing on partnerships versus what I saw with the other brand, where it's like they are changing their can, their colors, they're putting characters like movie characters on their packaging. And you're saying like, hey, we are staying true to who we are and how we show up, but we are being much more strategic about the partnership side, which is very fascinating. And I might have to pick your brain off of this call because I just took on partnership operations for Trainual, and it's just like this big puzzle piece we're navigating. But I think you've done it so gracefully and so tactically that I would love to dig into that with you at some point. But the other thing is too, with those strategic partnerships is I actually tried Sunsip at Playbook, and people were raving about it. And I saw the can and I didn't immediately recognize that it was HealthAid. And so I flipped it over, looked at the ingredients, and I was like, oh man, it's so rare to see something this good for you in that type of setting. Tried it, loved it. So people out there haven't tried Sunsip yet, you have to give it a shot. It's so good. But I too have had this feeling like kombucha products need to be more readily available where you can find beer, where you can find soda. Why can I not walk up to a bar and ask for what kombucha they have on tap the same way anybody can ask for a beer? They taste pretty similar, even though kombucha is way better. Yeah. But they have that same kind of vibe. One just is really good for you and one's not. But I've always felt like there should be an option for people that don't drink. And I feel like kombucha just fits so nicely into that sort of environment. So the can concept, the partnerships, that is all so cool. So strategic. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's been exactly. I think for us, we are so inspired by this idea of introducing it to more and more people. So whatever platform can help us do it, we're going to tell you about prebiotics. We're going to tell you about the taste profile. We're going to help you kind of understand why you need it in your life. And so that's kind of our inspiration for all of these. Fun fact about craft beer and kombucha and wine and kombucha, we did a big R&D exploration into why kombucha and health aid kombucha tastes so unique. And it actually hits all the parts of the tongue. And so that's what makes the flavor profile so different than like a sparkling something or other. It truly has that sweet taste that you get from the cold pressed juices and the organic juices. And then it's got that bitter and it's got the sour from the acids. And that makes it this really robust experience that you just want to keep drinking. I mean, I do this in my life all the time. I ask people if they've had kombucha and then, if they say no, I'm like, well, let's do it. Here's, I think a great flavor that you should try, usually berry lemonade or a pink lady apple. And they're so surprised at how much they enjoy it and how much they want to keep taking more sips because it just really fills out that mouthfeel and your palate in a way that not many things do, but craft beer or wine sometimes can hit that as well.
They say umami is like the 5th flavor of the world, right? Are you petitioning for kombucha to be the 6th flavor of the world?
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like you've shared so many different ideas that are like these really big brand moments, big pivotal changes. And I'm curious where sort of those sparks and ideas come from.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, and this is a standard brand marketer answer, but I promise it's true and it should always be done, is that it truly starts with consumer insights. That is our guiding light in absolutely everything. Those insights can come from anywhere. But it's something that I became ingrained in at P&G and then has become something that I carry as a light post for me wherever I go. And what I love to do the most is look at what are those trial barriers. This is something that not a lot of marketers actually know. They know what people love about them. They know what their brand stands for. They know what the benefits of their category are. But do you know why people don't like you? And what's keeping them from buying you? And if you really get to the root of that, you start to uncover things that you've got to break down with every single piece of your marketing. So if you look at our TV campaign right now, it's called Thrill Your Gut. And this came from 2 super crucial insights. One is that a lot of people, the majority, don't know what kombucha is. Actually, not the majority. It's around 35 to 40%. They don't know what kombucha exactly is. So we've got that to do. Most people who haven't tried it are worried it's going to taste like kimchi or like whatever they think of a fermented food. Fair. It's got a funky name. I get it. So they're worried about the taste. And then they don't know why they would want to pay more for it or what it's actually going to do for them in their life. Gut health is a huge topic that, we could spend the entire podcast talking about. But what people don't exactly know all the things that, you or I may know about gut health. But what they do know is they need probiotics in their diet. So we kind of packaged all that together. And now how do you do that in 15 seconds? That's the challenge, right? So we worked with an amazing agency. They're called Fun Day. And we gave them this challenge. We gave them these sparks of ideas and these trial barriers. And we said, we need people to know that this is for them in their everyday occasions. So if you look at our campaign, it's someone working from home. It's someone watching late night TV. It's someone having a snack in their kitchen. And it's showing that kombucha is right there with them in these everyday normal occasions. And it can thrill your gut with deliciously bubbly and refreshing probiotics. And so that's where basically everything starts. And it's fun how it comes to life in different ways because insights for a TV campaign like that are so different than insights that I might use for TikTok. TikTok, we're doing things all of the time, working with creators, working with influencers, doing our own stuff, putting it out there. And that's where, again, it's still based on insights, but, you know, it comes to life in a variety of asset types. I mean, we've done stock up, AMSR, mukbangs, rage bait. Like those are like words I didn't even know 5 years ago, right? Like what even are those things?
I can't get on board with rage bait. That one's so hard. Just because I hate it so much as a consumer, that one's just really tough for me.
I think, you know, our take on rage bait, we did it with Sunsip and it was just so over the top ridiculous that it was funny. And it was our, you know, it was a way to do homegrown humor, which classic marketing, it always hits, right? So what it, you know, you'll see it on our Sunsip channel. We went viral for it, but someone is going to be pouring their Sunsip. They ran out of ice. So they used frozen vegetables, which is like absolutely disgusting. They put the frozen vegetables in and then pour their Sunsip. And TikTok had a field day with that. So that's one of those things that had I known about that concept before we launched it, had the team come to me and said, "Are you cool with this?" I'd be like, "Hell no. Are you kidding me?" But in the end of the day, you got to let the team take risks, especially in organic social. It's the place to play with those things. And there's a reason why Rage Bait works. It's tapping into whatever that collective consciousness is in the moment.
My question to you that I had on here was like, how do you keep your creative team aligned, but also like free enough to get weird and bring ideas to the table? And now I'm thinking in my head, maybe I have to flip this back on her a little bit. Like, how do you let go? How do you let the team get weird? Because it sounds like they're already on board.
Yeah, they are. Exactly. I mean, I think it can be either one of us at any point in time, right? So, you know, I think Sunsip is a great example where it's very easy to make that brand all about like sunshine and happiness. And if you do that, I think everything is about sunshine and happiness and we're not going to break through. So, you know, taking a risk on like rage bait or doing mukbangs, like, you know, having people slam it with a sandwich that's super messy. Or even we had a latest influencer campaign when we launched Dr. Bubbles and cream soda, where she's like this overworked neurotic person and she fit it into her typical shtick and it worked so well. And so it's a process of letting go. I think let go in the places where you can let go, particularly with the creators. They know what works for their audience. They're creators for a reason. And so that's the place to kind of let it fly. But the one thing that I rest assured on is that we all know our brand fundamentals. So the team knows what are we about? What are our communication objectives? And those are words super boring, right? We need to talk about kombucha's probiotics and delicious taste. For Sunsip, we need to talk about it's a better for you soda with benefits. But if you want to riff off soda with benefits and make this your new boyfriend, great. If you want to, you know, talk about the many ways you drink kombucha or do a taste test on the street, whatever it is, go have fun with it. So I think it's constantly a balance and we're always in communication with each other on like, what do you think? Do you think we can do this? And sometimes it's my team saying, I want to try this out. And I'm like, all right, well, let's do it. And then sometimes it's me being like, no, push that farther. Go farther with that. Make it more interesting. Because right now it's really flat. And so we're constantly doing this to each other the whole time.
It sounds like they don't have to work too hard to get leadership buy-in because the culture is very much like experiment for the most part, or they're just like, hey, we're going to do this and ask for forgiveness later because you found out after the fact, which is kind of funny. I'm going to take a note of that one. But how do you sort of get leadership comfortable with when things fail? Because if there is some hesitancy to try some of these weird and different strategies, the chances of a bunch of them failing are pretty high. We know this with social media, but I'm sure even with like your larger campaigns as well. And it's really important to just get people comfortable with failure and moving on to the next idea. Do you feel like that's just built into your culture? Is there any sort of strategy you have that you've implemented around that?
It's super hard, to be honest. So I think there are places where it's easy to play around and very low risk. Social media, things like that. That's going to be easy. It's the $1 million programs or, the big marketing spends where it's going to be a lot harder. And I wish I knew the answer on how to completely get buy-in. I have not always gotten buy-in. I mean, there's, things that have not made it through the, CEO or board level approval. And that's been, some of them are still heartbreaks. Some of them I'm like, okay, I'm okay that we didn't do that. I think, this day and age, marketing is really, really tough because there's a lot that you can measure. And especially if you have people that are coming from like a digital forward brand, you can measure everything. I know, in a digital brand where everything is sold online, you can track absolutely every KPI and you know exactly what works hard for you. Now, translating that to a CPG brick and mortar world where I'm on the shelf with 5 other brands. We were just in a meeting yesterday and we were looking at some results that weren't as great. And we pull up the shelf and I'm like, well, it's not, I don't think because we discontinued some things. I think it's because we're not shelved eye level. And because 17 other brands that aren't as profitable and aren't growing as much are in a better shelf position. And that one shelf is not going to be the same everywhere. It's such a complex environment. There's a ton of promotions. People are cautious of their pocketbook. They buy what's on sale. So if I'm looking at, okay, why did we do so well in March? I can't with confidence tell you that it's because we ran remnant TV. Because at Aldi, we kicked ass. At Walmart, there's different things going on. At Sprouts, we're in this shelving situation. There's just a myriad of reasons why we might be performing better or worse. And marketing is one piece of a giant, giant puzzle. So it's constantly a challenge when I'm asked, hey, how do you know that this program is going to work? If I invest in the Dodgers, how do you know it's going to work? And this is the thing that keeps me up at night trying to answer that, but also gets me very passionate and very excited and challenges my brain in a good way. There's kind of 3 levels of how do I know it's going to work or how do I know it's a good idea, basically. Level 1 is it's a good media value, right? We know what it costs to run media out in the world. And so I can just do the cost assessment and say it's a good media value. Level 2 is I have research now in my pocket that says it improves brand awareness. It improves their purchase intent. That's great. So that's awesome. People that saw our ad within Dodger Stadium or saw us there were more likely to buy Health-Ade after they left. But the holy grail is this much money spent in Dodgers now equals XYZ money in revenue. That is a number I'm chasing and I can extrapolate, but that's really hard to do with some of these bigger bets. So for example, we launched our new custom can with the Dodgers this year. It was so hard to get buy-in. And for a lot of reasons. The first reason is that when you do something with an MLB team, you are only allowed to sell that particular co-branded item within the MLB, that particular team's geographic area. That's a nightmare for sales and distribution and operations. So our first answer to ourselves was, I don't think we can do this. I don't think we can actually segregate out the volume and make sure that it only lands in LA. I don't think it's going to work. That was the first answer. I was so excited about it. And you already know I don't take no for an answer. So I was like, well, can we just ask how could it work? And what would it take? And had to just knock down barrier after barrier after barrier. And finally, after weeks and weeks of working on this, not to mention you've got to get this can approved by Dodgers, by MLB. You've got to get the can made. Finally, we got to a solution. It was one of the best things we've done this year so far. It got so much love from fans. KTLA featured it in the morning news and in the weekend news. It was the big highlight of opening day, for us and for the Dodgers. It got us so much press, way like 100% worth all the money, but I could not have proved that up front. So that was a big lean in. I think this is going to work. I think it's worth it. We've got to try something. And using kind of passion and a follow your gut mentality, everyone did say yes. And so here we are. But it's constantly something we are trying to get better and better at. But it's that tension and pushback. It's really healthy in a business. It means we're being really smart and careful and not spending our money just on anything. So I do appreciate the pushback and the prove it to me that exists.
I want to just sort of encompass everything that you're sharing, because we have this core value at Trainual and it's called Make Ideas Happen. And every quarter we give somebody a Woolly Award based on this core value of, are you somebody who shows up and makes ideas happen? And I actually think you sort of enhanced it in a way where I want to start telling people, before you jump to make ideas happen and you're chasing that, make ideas possible. Because when you think about just waving your magic wand of what would it take to even make this idea possible, you take it from being this big sort of monster to something that's just a shadow on the wall. It's not really a monster at all. And it's actually, I think this could be possible and this could be possible. So I am officially petitioning for us to have a part 2 of Make Ideas Happen, which is Make Ideas Possible, because I think it's such a more clever way to look at things that feel like they are impossible, to make them happen. So I love that so much.
Oh, good. Well, yeah. And even for us with the Dodgers, we had done a sports partnership with the Seattle Seahawks a few years before I joined the brand, and it didn't light the world on fire. And so we had to overcome our own, this doesn't work mentality in creating this Dodgers partnership and saying, how could it work? What are our must-haves? And part of it was we have to have in-stadium distribution, and we have to be able to amplify this way beyond just the stadium. So it meant that we got our sales team involved. We said, okay, if we're going to be available at Dodger Stadium, now this is licensed for you to go be available at every store in that surrounding area. And that then was the proof in the pudding, because we got incremental distribution that then was extra revenue on top of what we had before. So, yeah, isn't it always about overcoming what you think is possible or what will work and truly drilling down into the why?
Oh, I think that's such a good word to end on. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was incredibly insightful and selfishly very insightful for me in this new role that I'm undertaking. I learned so much from you today, and I'm sure those that are listening have learned a ton as well. So any final thoughts that you want to share with folks today?
No, but follow your gut and try a kombucha. That's really it. Try a healthy kombucha.
Well, amen. As always, document your processes and be a good human. Until next time, that's all for us today.